This is the video you've all been waiting for. For years, baseball fans have fought over who deserves the title of greatest of all time. They've stayed up late into the night, making the case for legends of the game. And while I'm sure you have your own opinion too, I can't help but feel like all of this debate is so limited. Look, it's 2023. The oceans are on fire, AI is coming for us all, and a pitch clock is somehow the thing that's making people lose their minds. So when it comes to talking about baseball, I don't think we need to bother with silly things like reality anymore. So the question I bring to you today is as follows. Across all media, that means movies, TV, books, video games, even magazine articles, who is the greatest fictional ball player of all time? The gift boat. We'll workshop that. Anyway, here are some ground rules. First off, the player has to be fictional. This seems pretty straightforward, but it does take some major characters off the table. It means no Field of Dreams, no Moneyball, and no 42. This also applies to real-world players who played themselves in a movie, like Carlos Baerga in Little Big League, or Randy Johnson in Little Big League, or Ken Griffey Jr. in Little Big League. There's probably not going to be a lot of Little Big League in this video either. B. The quality of the movie, TV show, game, or what have you does not matter. I don't care if the movie won an Oscar or if it's not fit for the bargain bin at Walmart. It all counts. If you want to hear about good baseball movies, check out Baseball's Not Dead's excellent video on the topic. If you want it all though, the cream of the crop as well as the slop, stay right here. Thirdly, we're sticking to official sources when it comes to things like stats. It's fun to project, say, Hamilton Porter's career home run total in Out of the Park Baseball, but going through season sim after season sim for every player in the video would turn my brain into mashed bananas, not to mention that it would take
forever.
And on that note, for my own sanity, I'm dividing this video into two parts, or brackets, if you will. There's the pitcher's bracket and the hitter's bracket. It's not remotely scientific, and my reasoning will be biased and often irrational, but it's my video. If you disagree, then make your own. Anyway, at the end, the two bracket winners will face off against each other for the title of greatest fake ball player of all time. So let's get on with it, and find out once and for all who the gift boat is. Hey, we really need to fix that name. We're starting this list off with the one, the only, Kenny Powers. Powers is the main character in Eastbound and Down, played by Danny McBride. Now, I don't want to risk a copyright strike from HBO for showing too many clips, so instead, I'm going to read you a list of in-universe nicknames for the character straight from Wikipedia. He's the People's Champion, the Team Leader, the Shelby Sensation, the Reverse Apache Master, the Man with the Golden Dr. Balls, Kenny Powers, La Flama Blanca, El Hombre Negro, and the Bulletproof Tiger. According to his official website, Kenny's career exploded after he debuted in the final inning of the 2001 World Series, which we all know featured the Atlanta Braves famously playing the Baltimore Orioles. With a World Series win already under his belt at just 19, Powers looked poised for greatness. Armed with a 101-mile-per-hour fastball, Powers Mania swept the nation. But as Kenny would tell you,
sometimes when you bring the thunder, you get lost in the storm.
By the time the show begins, Kenny is washed up, out of the league, and teaching at his hometown middle school. Based on his site, he ultimately played 4 seasons in Major League Baseball, one each with the Braves, the Yankees, the Giants, and the Red Sox. In that time, plus 1 season in the minors, he logged a .440 ERA over 219 innings. David Appelman from Fangraphs actually calculated Kenny's WAR and found that he was worth roughly 2 wins over his career. His best season, 2002, would barely crack the top 20 relief pitchers from that year.
Try a little tenderness, yeah. Stop it.
Much like pre-meltdown Kenny Powers, Ebby Calvin Nuke LaLoosh is a young pitcher with a big arm and an even bigger
I want
mouth.
to bring the heater to announce my presence with authority. To announce your what? Announce my presence with authority. To
In
announce
Bull
your
Durham,
fucking presence.
Nuke is one of the league's top pitching prospects, with one big problem. he's got a rifle of an arm, but can't find the plate. With the help of Crash Davis and Annie Savoy, played by Kevin Costner and Susan Sarandon respectively, Nuke is able to grow into an MLB-level hurler. He's one of the most idiosyncratic characters on this list, with a pitching delivery somewhere between Mark Fidrich and Dontrelle Willis. He's also based on a real person, a pitcher who never made it past the minor leagues, despite having a fastball that Ted Williams said was the fastest he'd ever saw. Steve Dalkowski. Steve Dalkowski was a prospect for the Orioles in the late 50s and early 60s. Over 9 years in the minors, he averaged 12.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, sitting down over 1,300 total batters in that time. There's no way of knowing, but people who saw him pitch have said that his fastball was upwards of 110, 115, or even 125 miles per hour. Regardless of whether those numbers are true, Dalkowski was undoubtedly one of the most unique talents the game has ever seen. But like Nuke LaLoosh, Dalkowski was also incredibly wild. During one single-A game, he had 27 strikeouts, walked 16 batters, and threw 283 pitches. In 1960 alone, he struck out 262 and walked 262 in 170 innings. Yet, by 1965, he was out of the game altogether. Dalkowski is one of the biggest what-ifs in baseball history, not to mention the perfect creative inspiration for fellow Orioles farmhand Ron Shelton, who'd go on to write and direct Bull Durham. Henry Rowengartner is the diminutive hero of 1993's Rookie of the Year. After breaking his arm, the 12-year-old Rosenbagger is surprised to find that the tendons have healed, quote, a little too tight. And while in real life this would probably mean a lifetime of chronic arm pain, this is a kids' movie from the 90s. So instead, Henry finds out that his botched medical procedure has granted him the power to throw 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. The Chicago Cubs catch word of Runamacher's incredible ability and recruit the little leaguer to pitch for them. With the aid of veteran pitcher Chet Steadman, Rosenberger learns the ropes, and the Cubs win their first title since 1908. Now, Gardenhauser might be the youngest player in the pitcher's bracket, but he's also one of the best in terms of raw ability. Unfortunately, his MLB peak was really more of a flash in the pan, since the final act of the movie sees Henry lose his pitching ability once again, and with it, his professional career. Had he shown more longevity, Ruhlenfurter might have been a contender. Maybe he should have listened to his pitching coach.
Key to being a big league pitcher is the 3 R's. Readiness, recuperation, and conditioning.
Nice velocity.
Sounded like it. Jesus.
What is it with the late 80s in baseball movies? Between 1988 and 1994, we saw the release of Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, A League of Their Own, The Sandlot, Rookie of the Year, Cobb, 8 Men Out, and Major Leagues 1 and 2. Of those 9 films, there's one actor who starred in a full third of them, Scary Movie 5 cast member Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen is far and away one of the best baseball players out of the actors on this list. While he was at Santa Monica High School, he was a star shortstop and pitcher for the baseball team, for which he posted a 40-15 record. Sheen did his own pitching while filming his scenes for Major League, reaching the high 80s with his fastball. This sets him apart from a lot of the other actors in this video, even if he did later admit to taking steroids for the role. None of this matters, however, since we're here to talk about Sheen's character, Rick Wild Thing Vaughn, who ranks among the best fake pitchers in film history. Unlike Sheen, Vaughn has a fastball that sits in the high 90s, which he uses to help Cleveland to a division title. He does this by striking out Triple Crown winner Clu Haywood, more on him later, with a 101-mile-per-hour fastball in one of the final moments of the film.
Give him a heater.
The Wild Thing is our first actual MLB player to appear in this video, but much like Nuke LaLoosh, his lack of control would keep him from being the best pitcher on screen.
3 more. Like I've done 1,000,000 times.
If there was any debate about which Kevin Costner baseball movie was the best, there's not much of an argument about his worst. For Love of the Game is Costner's third baseball film, and while it really isn't a bad movie, it doesn't come close to either Bull Durham or Field of Dreams. There is still some good stuff in there for baseball fans. You get to see the old Yankee Stadium, and Vin Scully, or at least his voice, makes an appearance doing play-by-play. It doesn't get better than that. No, really, it doesn't. Not only was the movie a box office flop, Costner earned a Golden Raspberry nomination for Worst Actor for his performance in the role of Billy Chapel. Billy Chapel is a once great pitcher who at the age of 40 is making his last ever start against the New York Yankees. Based on what's said in the movie, we know that Chapel has had a Hall of Fame caliber career for Detroit. At one point, his trainer says that he's won, quote, every award there is to win. Even if we stick to just the major awards, that would mean that Chapel has won a Rookie of the Year, a Cy Young, and at least one MVP. In baseball history, there are just two people who have done that, the legendary Don Newcombe and Ben Verlander's brother. Take a career like those two had, and add in the perfect game that he throws in the movie, and Billy Chapel ends up being the best baseball player Kevin Costner has ever played. Side note, this movie was directed by Sam Raimi. Yes, that Sam Raimi. The person who directed this is the same person who made this.
Back to formula.
We all have our misses, I guess.
And you made yourself a handshake deal with the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings.
The Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings is definitely the winner for longest title in this video. It also might be the best cast baseball movie you've never heard of. This movie came out in 1976, 5 years after Billy D. Williams had his breakout role in Brian's Song, one of the saddest sports films ever made.
How you doing, Vic?
It also came out 4 years before Empire Strikes Back, in which Williams would play the most iconic character of his career in Lando Calrissian. Nestled between these two famous roles, though, lies Bingo Long, an underappreciated tribute to one of baseball's more underrepresented time periods. Bingo Long the pitcher, for his part, is based on Satchel Paige. Like Paige, Bingo Long is a hard-throwing righty playing in the Depression-era Negro Leagues. Like Paige, Long is charismatic, charming crowds with his performances on the mound. And just like Paige was said to have done, Long calls in his entire outfield during the 9th inning of a game, before going on to strike out the side. In the opening scene of the film, which takes place in 1939, Bingo Long is mentioned alongside Paige as one of the two best pitchers in the league. By 1939, Satchel Paige was 33 years old and 13 years into a baseball career that would span 5 decades. Now, exact statistics are hard to find for Paige, just like they are for many Negro League players. But Paige is undeniably the greatest Negro League pitcher ever, not to mention one of the greatest, period. So if we're taking Bingo Long as Paige's fictional equivalent, he'd definitely be among the best fake pitchers out there.
The Mets have been trying to keep the secret as well as they can, but slowly the word is starting to get out. Apparently the Mets have signed a young, gangly, unknown pitcher who may be the best to ever play the game.
If, by some strange set of circumstances, you haven't seen Stark Raving Sports' most viewed video ever on the legendary Sid Finch, pause this one, open a new tab, and watch it right now. Okay, now that you're back, let's do a quick recap of the man once dubbed baseball's greatest pitching prospect. In the spring of 1985, George Plimpton published this piece in Sports Illustrated. In the 14-page article, Plimpton introduced the world to Hayden Siddhartha Sid Finch, a Harvard-educated English orphan who learned to pitch by flinging rocks in the mountains of Tibet. Despite his impressive 168-mile-per-hour fastball, Finch was reportedly torn between playing baseball and pursuing, quote, the French horn, or golf, or something. Fans and GMs alike were blown away by the phenom, with the Mets being the lucky team to sign him. All 3 major TV networks sent reporters to Finch's introductory press conference, where they got to meet Joe Burton, a middle school art teacher from Oak Park, Illinois. C. Burton had been recruited by his friend, Sports Illustrated photographer Lane Stewart, to pose for an article in the April 1st edition of the magazine. He would be playing the role of the fictional Sid Finch, in the most high-profile April Fool's Day joke in sports history. His four-seamer was 60 miles an hour faster than the MLB record, and he could throw it without having to warm up. His pitching ability had been cultivated by a, quote, yogic master of the mind-body. On a scale of 1 to 8, the Mets gave Finch's velocity and command a 9. There's no comparison between Sid Finch and the pitchers mentioned so far in this video. He's a superhuman talent and blows any mere mortal out of the water. Even so, he's not the best fake pitcher of them all, for the fact that he never did turn pro. Talk about a lost opportunity.
All you really need is heart. If you don't have heart, then you don't get dinner.
The Scout is an Albert Brooks movie from 1994 about, you guessed it, a scout who discovers the greatest baseball prospect of all time. With Brendan Fraser playing the immature Steve Nebraska, The Scout is like if George Steinbrenner produced Good Will Hunting. Just like Matt Damon is a math prodigy in the movie, Steve Nebraska is the greatest baseball talent to have ever lived. Just like Will, Nebraska meets with a psychologist in order to work through childhood trauma. And just like Will, Nebraska is able to overcome these issues with the help of a mentor played by a famous comedian. But while Good Will Hunting is maybe one of the greatest movies of the last 30 years, there's a decent chance you've never seen, or even heard of, The Scout. That's mostly because it's not good. It's not as funny as it wants to be, the drama doesn't really work, and it feels like we spend more time watching George Steinbrenner than the actual baseball. Seriously, why is he in this movie so much? When they do play though, it's some of the most ridiculous baseball that's ever been shown on screen. Without even warming up, Steve Nebraska is able to throw so hard that he literally knocks the catcher down. He throws nothing but strikes and hits home runs like it's batting practice. At one point in the film, Nebraska takes part in a workout for MLB scouts. During this scene, in which he hits 109 on the radar gun, he strikes out MVP winner Keith Hernandez on 3 pitches. That's not all though, because he then goes on to hit not 1, but 2 home runs off 2-time Cy Young winner Brett Saberhagen. And unlike Sid Finch, Nebraska actually does make it to the show, for none other than the New York Yankees themselves. In short, Steve Nebraska is what you would get if you mixed Shohei Ohtani with a writer's room full of cocaine. He's incredible, and the best fake pitcher in any movie, TV show, book, or otherwise. But is he the best? Period. Can Brendan Fraser achieve what would surely be the highest honor of his career by taking home the title of Best Made-Up Player? That part remains to be seen, as we enter
Relax. All right, don't try to strike everybody out. Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.
Yeah, we're not done with Kevin Costner just yet. If you look up the phrase baseball movie in the dictionary, odds are you'll find a picture of Costner underneath. The man's pumped out sports movies like Ford Does Cars, and none of them are better than 1988's Bull Durham. We already covered Nuke LaLoosh in the pitcher's bracket, but it's Costner's Crash Davis who's at the forefront of the film. By the time the movie starts, Crash has already spent a dozen years in the minors, plus 21 days in the big leagues. He's the classic grizzled veteran, brought in to train the young LaLoosh. As for his play, Crash finishes the movie by breaking the minor league home run record with 247. It's a dubious achievement to be sure, but that doesn't make it any less notable. In real life, the closest thing to Crash Davis would be someone like Mike Hessman. In 2015, Hessman hit his 433rd career minor league home run, breaking the mark set by Buzz Arlett of the Oakland Oaks in 1937. Hessman began his pro career in 1996 at the age of 18. By his retirement in 2015, he'd played in 2,000 games over 19 minor league seasons. Like Crash, Hessman was never able to stay in the majors for long. Because of that, they both fall outside the ranks of the best batters ever, fictional or otherwise.
Come on!
A League of Their Own is my favorite baseball movie. It's got the perfect mix of humor, sentimentality, and Jon Lovitz's mustache, not to mention some of the best played baseball in any film. Gina Davis leads the way as Dottie Hinson, star catcher for the Rockford Peaches of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. She can hit, she can run, and she can throw, making her the best all-around player in the league. If you haven't seen the movie, first of all, what are you doing with your life? But secondly, A League of Their Own draws a lot of inspiration from the real world. Not only was the AAGPBL a real league created during World War II, but many of the characters are based on actual players as well. Tom Hanks' Jimmy Dugan, for example, is a mix of Hall of Famers Jimmy Fox and Hack Wilson. Walter Harvey is a fictionalized version of chewing gum tycoon Philip K. Wrigley, who launched the real league in 1943. Dottie Hinson herself is loosely based on Dorothy Cammy Kamenchek, the most feared batter in the league for a decade. There are a lot of obvious parallels between the two. Kamenchek was also a Rockford Peach, an incredible fielder, and a legendary hitter. But there are also some differences. Kamenchek was a lefty, Dottie is a righty. Kamenchek played first and the outfield, Dottie is a catcher. And while Kamenchek played for a decade, Dottie only played for one season in the movie. And it's that last point that's going to stop Dottie Hinson from winning it all today, because she might have been the best, but it wasn't for long enough. I get it though. I probably would have gone to live on a farm with Bill Pullman too if I had the chance.
Taylor, what you doing back up here?
Couldn't cut it the Mexican League.
That's your wife and my kids.
Not only is Clu Haywood one of the best villains in any baseball movie, he's also a rare example of a pro athlete playing a role other than themselves. Over 11 MLB seasons, Pete Vukovich racked up 93 wins, a Cy Young Award, and a reputation as one of the most menacing figures in baseball. After he retired in 1987, he was cast in the movie Major League as closer Duke Simpson. When one of the movie's producers saw the 6'4" Vukovich's wild hair and mustache, though, they promoted him to the role of Yankee slugger Clu Haywood. According to announcer Harry Doyle, played by real-life baseball icon Bob Uecker, Haywood led the league in most offensive categories, including nose hair. He also won the Triple Crown, which in 1989 would have made him the first player in over 20 years to do so. With a .341 average, 48 homers, and 121 runs batted in, he was the best hitter in the league at a time that saw players like Kirby Puckett and Tony Gwynn in their prime. I do have to point out, however, that Haywood did famously strike out against the Wild Thing in that legendary one-game playoff. So that's points away for choking in the clutch.
Yes, shit!
Standing at 6'4", it doesn't take much to imagine the mustachioed Tom Selleck as an aging ball player, and that's exactly who he plays as Jack Elliott, the once great slugger at the center of Mr. Baseball. Although he may have been 47 when the movie was filmed, Selleck doesn't look a day over 39 as Elliott, who finds himself playing in the NPB as a last-ditch effort to salvage his career. Over the course of the movie, which really uses baseball as more of a backdrop to Jack's ongoing relationship drama, he's able to adapt to the culture of Japanese baseball and become a team player. During the climactic game against the Giants, Jack has a chance to break the league record for consecutive games with a home run. Instead, he lays down a 2-strike bunt to win the game. All in all, Mr. Baseball is a pretty okay movie about love, cultural appreciation, and sometimes even baseball. Jack Elliott, to Selleck's credit, is overflowing with charisma. He also takes his shirt off a lot, if you're into that. And as far as the second half of his name goes, Mr. Baseball is clearly good enough to have once been an MVP first baseman for the Yankees, even if he's all but washed up by the time the movie begins. Looking at his career as a whole, I'd say he'd be pretty hard to beat.
Martinez ready, steadies, and delivers to Rayburn, drives it deep to right center field. The ball rising through the ring.
On paper, The Fan should be great. It's a baseball thriller, which some would argue is an oxymoron. It stars Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro, who were two of the hottest names in Hollywood in 1996. It's also directed by Tony Scott, who's responsible for some of the best action films of the 80s and 90s. But in reality, The Fan is a pretty lackluster movie from a bunch of people who have definitely done better work. When it comes to Snipes' Bobby Rayburn, though, we have one of the most talented ball players put to screen. Rayburn is an all-star hitter who starts the film having signed a $40 million deal with the Giants. Because of this, many people at the time believed that Snipes' character was an obvious parallel to Barry Bonds. Bonds had joined San Francisco in 1993 on a $43 million deal, the biggest in baseball. He earned it too, going on to win MVP in his first year with the team. If Bobby Rayburn is in fact supposed to be mid-90s Bonds, that is, Bonds before he made some, key lifestyle changes, that would make him a borderline Hall of Famer, and a top-tier fake player.
Kiss my black ass.
Don't get personal. Don't get personal. No.
That's too much. I didn't mean it.
No, I know.
Stan Ross is Bernie Mac's character in the movie Mr. 3000. He's also the greatest Brewers hitter of all time, statistically speaking. In the 2004 film, Ross returns to baseball after a decade-long absence in an attempt to reach the 3,000 hit milestone. In an early scene, Ross proudly claims that he, quote, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame with the Immortals. And as it turns out, he's right. As part of the movie's marketing, Touchstone Pictures released an official Stan Ross baseball card, complete with career statistics. By adding up his yearly numbers, which, it must be noted, gives you a totally different result from the ones on the card, you'll see that he is not just the best Brewer ever, but among the best hitters in baseball history. On top of his 3,000 hits, Ross has a career on-base percentage of .466. That's third all-time, behind only Ted Williams and Babe Ruth. His .340 batting average is the 18th highest, and his career WAR of 105.4 is 20th best among hitters. This also puts Stan Ross miles ahead of current Brewers GOAT Robin Yount, whose measly 77 wins above replacement pale in comparison.
Spirits are going today. I believe. Keep the faith. Let's go. EA Sports.
MVP Baseball 2005.
If Bobby Rayburn is like Barry Bonds, this next player is Bonds on steroid. Wait, that doesn't work. This next player is also like Barry Bonds. At the age of 38 years old, Barry Bonds had one of the best seasons of any player in 2003. He'd hit 45 home runs in just 130 games and become the first and only player to join the 500-500 club. So it's no wonder that fans were looking forward to playing as the Slugger in the upcoming MVP Baseball 2004. Bonds, however, had other plans. In an uncommon move for a player, he opted to license himself, meaning that he'd keep any and all revenue made off of his name or likeness. This also meant that he wouldn't be appearing in licensed MLB products, including MVP Baseball. Now unable to use the sport's best hitter, game developers were forced to get creative. So instead of Bonds, they invented a brand new, fake player, John Dowd. Named after a producer at EA Sports, John Dowd was in many ways the anti-Barry Bonds. Bonds was black, Dowd was white. Bonds was number 25, Dowd was 51. Bonds' walk-up song was Dr. Dre's The Next Episode. Dowd walked up to hard rock. On the other hand, Dowd was a very obvious stand-in for the missing MVP. They were both left fielders, they both hit and threw lefty, and they were both 6'2", 228 pounds. They shared a birthday, and, more importantly, they could both crush the ball. After the 2004 season, for which Bonds took home his 7th career MVP award, John Dowd got a major upgrade. In MVP Baseball 2005, Dowd has 99 power and 99 contact against righties, plus 84 contact and 89 power versus left-handers. Bonds was the all-time walks leader, so Dowd's plate discipline is also 99, while his 90 speed serves as a reminder of Bonds' former base-stealing days. All of this makes John Dowd, a fake player, the best in the game. He beats out superstars like Vladimir Guerrero, Albert Pujols, and Manny Ramirez in MVP Baseball 05 player rankings. He also beats out almost every other hitter in this video. Almost. He's the natural himself. The name Roy Hobbs is synonymous with greatness. Using a bat he carved from a tree, he stuns audiences with his tape measure home runs. He can run, he can pitch, he looks like Robert Redford. At just 19 years old, Hobbs is able to strike out the Whopper, the Naturals version of Babe Ruth, on 3 straight pitches. He then proceeds to go to Chicago, get shot in the stomach, and disappear for 16 years, only to return as the mysterious new right fielder for the New York Knights. His coaches think he's too old to be a rookie at first, but he quickly proves them wrong when he literally knocks the cover off the ball. With Hobbs leading the way, the Knights go from last place to the pennant race, as their newfound slugger breaks records and scoreboard clocks with his homers. I'll admit, choosing the best fake hitter of them all was significantly harder than picking the best pitcher, if only because there are so many more to choose from. But I feel safe in saying that Roy Hobbs is a better batter than anyone else on this list. Does that make him the best, though? There's only one way to find out. Before we decide once and for all who will take home the title of the top imaginary ball player, I need to acknowledge some honorable mentions. These are the players who weren't quite good enough, had abilities that gave them an unfair advantage, or who I decided for one reason or another not to include. Again, this is my list. If you don't like it, leave a comment, or better yet, make your own. First off, we've got the kids. As much as I love The Sandlot or The Bad News Bears, there's just no way a kid like Ham Porter or Kelly Leak could stand a chance against even the lesser adult players in this video. On the other hand, we do see Benny the Jet Rodriguez as an adult in the final scene of The Sandlot, in which he steals home for the Dodgers. Even then, it's not quite enough to land the Jet in the hitter's bracket. Then there are the animals. From dogs to gorillas, from Ed to Mr. Ed, these animals have shown us that the game of baseball isn't just for the two-legged. Unfortunately, this list is. Sorry, Bugs. And finally, we have those who can use magic, super strength, or any other supernatural power when playing. Unlike the kids, these guys are too powerful for this video. So that means no Superman, no Homelander, no Omni-Man, none of the Twilight vampires, no Sonic, and no Christopher Robin. He knows what he did. And with that, we move into our final matchup. Who will emerge victorious from this showdown between the best fake pitcher against the best fake hitter? Let's find out. If you thought Steve Nebraska's physical abilities were unbelievable, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like I said, Steve makes his debut for the New York Yankees in Game 1 of the World Series. After being lowered to the mound via helicopter, which, it's a long story, Nebraska strikes out all 3 St. Louis Cardinals on 3 pitches each, completing the second ever immaculate inning in the World Series. In the bottom of the first, he hits for himself as the pitcher, taking a Bob Tewksbury curveball into deep center for a solo home run. It's the kind of thing that could only happen in a movie. Roy Hobbs' performance in the final game of the season is similarly unbelievable, if better written. In his last plate appearance, with his bat shattered and his sides literally splitting open, Hobbs crushes a towering shot deep into the lights. As he rounds the base path, a shower of glass and sparks rains down onto the stadium. But remember how I said that the quality of the movie, TV show, game, or what have you does not matter? Yeah, right here. The quality of the movie, TV show, game, or what have you does not matter. As I said before, Steve Nebraska is the kind of player you only find in a movie, because there's no other way to explain how, over the course of his first MLB game, he's able to strike out 27 straight Cardinals on a total of 81 pitches. That's 9 consecutive immaculate innings, a baseball record, and a perfect game. He finishes the performance by striking out Ozzie Smith, who, for some reason, is batting 9th in the order despite having hit 5 home runs in the postseason. It's the most unrealistic thing to happen in any baseball movie, and I'm counting the one where Brad Pitt plays this guy. If for no other reason than the screenwriter's sheer disinterest in anything resembling accuracy, Steve Nebraska is the single most incredible ball player in fiction. Hold on. You thought I forgot him, didn't you? You thought we were going to make it through this entire video without mentioning the one, the only, Pablo Sanchez.
I'm gonna give it to Pablo. I really don't think it's close. I'm sorry.
Pablo is the undisputed, uncontested GOAT of the backyard sports games. He's the best at everything, but it's in baseball that he truly dominates. He's enigmatic, always equipped with a bat and his signature backwards cap. He's the silent type, barely uttering a word as he crushes home runs over backyard fences. And he's a 5-tool player, stealing bases like Lou Brock, catching balls like Willie Mays, and hitting homers like Reggie Jackson. You may point out that Pablo never made it to the major leagues, to which I say this: MLB wishes they had a player like Pablo Sanchez. Mike Trout may be good and all, but has he ever hit a dinger off of Ahmed Khan? I didn't think so. But on top of all of that, as if it wasn't enough, Pablo has been keeping a secret, one which will cement his place as not just the best fake baseball player, but the best fake athlete ever. As previously mentioned, his walk-up song is iconic, playing anytime you click over to Pablo on the selection menu. Now, if you pick Pablo right away, you simply move on and play the game. But if you let the song play out in its entirety, you'll get this.
Hey, don't tell the other kids, but I speak English. I learned Spanish in school.
This is psychological warfare. While the other players are trying to catch up to him on the field, Pablo has transcended the physical plane. He is beyond baseball. He is beyond all sports. He is playing with minds now. Pablo Sanchez is the greatest. That isn't an opinion. That is a fact. And that's the end of this video.